Kansas State plays Colorado. It's late. It's a 10:15 Eastern time kickoff on ESPN. Both of these teams are off a bye. Now, normally when you got both teams off a bye, that just puts a premium on coaching. Which of these coaching staffs do you trust the most? Deion's 1-5 against ranked teams. I don't care that much about that because they were a terrible team in year one. And they may be a rapidly ascending team in year two, so that may or may not matter. Colorado, just an interesting little mini padlock / paper pop stat here. You know, Colorado allowed 14 players to have either 100 yards rushing or passing or receiving. So, Colin, because I may clip this, I'm going to say it again. Paper pop again. Colorado last year, they allowed 14 different players to have either 100 yards rushing or receiving in a game against them. They haven't allowed a single player to do that so far this year. That's what we call improvement. Kansas State, they want to establish the run. They should be able to establish the run. They got the 7th best rushing offense in the country. Colorado's sitting at about 80th in stopping the run. Remember, the last time we saw Kansas State, Avery Johnson looked as good as he's looked throwing the ball all year. We had him as our best bet of the week. They rolled Oklahoma State. Then they went into the bye at the perfect time, kind of like A&M. A&M rolls over Missouri, then they go into the bye. So do you get shot out of a cannon coming out of the bye? Because you guys haven't been great on the road. You barely got past Tulane. You're going on the road here. You got drugged by Brigham Young. You're going on the road here again. You're favored. Can I trust you? Well, I think you'll be able to run the ball. Can you throw the ball as well? Avery Johnson in Kansas State on the road. Can I trust him? Do you understand what Shadur Sanders is doing here? That's the Kansas State quarterback. Here's the Colorado quarterback. How should I state this in a way where the comment section doesn't turn into a complete cesspool? You remember when we talked about the Deion tax last year? And the Deion tax, as it relates to our show, was all the nonsense opinions that enter the room because Deion Sanders is part of the conversation. It's great to have Deion as part of the conversation. At least I love him being part of the conversation. But one of the downsides is it attracts a lot of outside attention, which is not bad, but some of that outside attention comes in running its mouth about a sport it knows little about. That's the Deion tax. There's an inverse Deion tax that Shadur Sanders pays. And I'm not quite sure people are picking up on it. Because I'm telling you right now, if any other quarterback were doing what Shadur Sanders was doing right now, it would be possibly the story of college football. But because he's Deion Sanders' son, the headline is he's Deion's son. Let me tell you what I mean by that. Colorado's 126th in rush yards per game. They're barely at 3 yards per carry. They're terrible at running the ball. Their leading rusher is 80 yards behind Kansas State's 3rd leading rusher. And they are 108th in pressure rate allowed, so he's been under constant harassment again this year, and yet he's top 10 in passing yards per game and touchdowns. He's only thrown 3 picks all year. He's top 15 in the country in completion percentage, and there's no reason on earth why he should be that good, except he's that good. And I haven't noticed many people talking about how good Shadur the player has been so far this year. And if he does that against Kansas State, they will beat Kansas State. Now, the trade-off there is Kansas State probably has as good a caliber at athlete as you will have seen all year defensively. So the trade-off on the other side is Kansas State can be had through the air. This is the dirty secret of this game that could swing it for Colorado. Kansas State can be had through the air, 101st, 107th actually, in explosive plays given up. So you got that on one hand. Kansas State can run the ball, control the clock. Kansas State could run for 300 yards in this game for all I know. It's a very, very interesting contrast in styles. Let's take a look at what the model thinks, Colin. As you see at the bottom of the screen, FanDuel's got Kansas State minus 4.5. Now, the model is more bullish on Kansas State. We got Kansas State minus 7.5. I'm very scared of that because of Kansas State's profile as a road team. I'm going to lay the points. I'm going to take Kansas State to win and cover. I'm not betting on it because I think just as easily as that happens, Colorado wins this thing outright. So I'll blindly trust the model because I don't have a strong opinion on the game. But, man, I learned my lesson when we took Baylor up there. Kansas State's a much better team than Baylor. They, according to the model, should win this thing. They got the 3rd best odds to win the Big 12 right now. Colorado has the 7th best odds. If they win this game, If Colorado wins this game, it is game on as it relates to Colorado contending for the Big 12. And might I remind you guys, if they're good enough to beat Kansas State, that means they're good enough to beat anyone on their schedule. And if they're of that caliber, that means they're a conference title contender. And if they're a conference title contender, that means by default, they're a playoff contender. One step at a time. The game happens this Saturday night. And it's a late game, so most of America will be able to watch it.